Hello, I'm Conrad from Greenhouse Learning, and this is the little series on the AQA GCSE papers and how to tutor them. And this one, we're going to look through the Shakespeare paper. So, Shakespeare and his paper is a lot like the 19th century novel one, where you get one big text. So, a lot of the skills are kind of transferable between them because it's mainly about analyzing and picking out information. So what we're going to do is we're going to go through this. We're going to go through this, and we're going to go through a paper, and we're going to kind of just look at how to answer it, what you should be telling your students to do, and how to hit those AOs. What the AOs are after. So this is just a quick reminder. If you haven't seen the first video, you've forgotten about the possible Shakespeare plays that can come up. So we've got Macbeth, Romeo and Juliet, The Tempest, Merchant of Time, Much Ado About Nothing, and Julius Caesar. Macbeth and Romeo and Juliet are the most common ones. We're going to look at a Macbeth example. I'd say they're the ones schools like to teach the most. And then here's just a quick reminder of the AOs. We're going to be comparing our answers to the AOs anyway, but this is just a reminder of what they are. So this is just kind of being able to point out the information, saying what it's about, you looking at the technique, structure, and language that are used to make those AO1 points. And then AO3 is the context in which the paper is written and relating that back to the question. And AO4 is just spag. So how the exam is laid out, like I said, it's a lot like the 19th century novel one. You get one essay and it's 30 marks, and you get 4 marks for spag. You have to read a passage in the play, and then you get asked about a character or theme or motive in the whole play. This says an hour 45 with unseen poetry because that's how it was done last year, but if it's not done with any other paper, it will just be straight up 50 minutes. So the question will center around characters, their relationships with each other, how Shakespeare portrays certain characters, and links within themes in the play and links within context in the play. Sometimes you do get questions on just themes, but normally they are themes related to characters, so it'll always be character based. I'm going to say always. Let's just say always. A question will always include a character, but other themes will be in there as well. So you do need to make sure you know the themes, but it's normally how the characters portray those certain themes in the question. So what Shakespeare is about. So how he uses different characters to symbolize different ideas. Need to understand the ideas at the time, so that's hitting the AO3s. So, what were the rules at the time, what were the laws? Because obviously Shakespeare was a lot older than any of the texts that we learn in the AQA syllabus. So understanding how it was different to anything else. Understand the different themes within the play, using contrasting characters in the play, and then need to think about how they interlink. So a lot of time you will get questions about two characters and how they show their relationship. So you need to be able to talk about the differences in those characters, how they portray different things, but then how they're constantly interlinking. Understand how Shakespeare develops and uses characters in the play to get his ideas across. Have a good grasp of the general themes in the play. And then different techniques that Shakespeare uses. So this is more about the AO2 now, but being able to understand how he uses structure, stagecraft, characterization, and dramatic speech and language are some examples. But when you're doing your own research, you look at those and uses. Like I said, we're not going to go into any deep detail about the topics. We're mainly just going to go about the general exam structure and how to answer it. So how to approach a question. You will see this a lot because you can use the same basic structure for all your exams. This one works well, and this is what schools tell you to do. So I think, most students will be following this, and it's the same for all the essay-based questions. So you need to read the text before, and then you highlight. So you highlight your AO1 and annotate your AO2. Think about AO3. That's what I told you to do. Just to constantly think about those AOs. Sorry, I think I've got those all around there because you highlight the AO2, so you highlight the bit of text that you're getting out, and you annotate it with the point that that text is going to make. So if I'm trying to talk about, one of the questions, I think the one we were looking at is fear. I'll be thinking about the main fear topics and then highlighting the text that backs up that point. And then always, always, always plan your answer and use PEE. You can use PEED as well. That's what I tell students to do to get to that next level. And now a lot of things say don't kind of use these limiting structures, but if you've got a student who struggles, and as a tutor, you'll probably more likely be tutoring struggling students, this is just a great way to get them started, get them in the flow, and then really be able to expand on their answers. Because, a lot of students, they just start with no plan, no real structure in their head, and it can just easily become waffle in a sense. So this is just a good way of having good, solid structures. So you make your point, you put the evidence in to support that point, and you explain how what you've put in then goes to the whole, explains the answer to the question. And then the D is just develop that, put more evidence in, more text. So it's just a good way to get you started. So then the essay should be an introduction, just generally outlining what you're going to talk about. It doesn't need to be a lot. It's just to get you in the flow of writing, get the marker ready for the answer. And then the main text should be 3 paragraphs. Aim for 4 if you can. 3 is good. If you do 3, you're not going to lose marks. And with the time limit, 3 is good. But it needs to be 3 completely different points. If you find you've got time and you've got more things to talk about, you can throw in another one. So there needs to be 3 paragraphs with clear different points and making sure you're hitting the O1, 2, and 3. And then conclusion, so a summary of all your points, what the overall essay suggests, and whether you agree or disagree with the text depending on the question. I think Shakespeare, they're not normally disagree. So that's the mark scheme. So this is what the exam paper will look like. So this is Macbeth one. So then this one is, so it says, read the following extract from Act 3, Scene 1 of Macbeth, and then answer the questions that follows. So at this point in the play, Macbeth is thinking about his feelings of Banquo. So the first thing that I tell students is don't read the text first, read the question first. And what is the main thing that I want you to focus on? I want you to focus on Macbeth's fears. How Shakespeare presents Macbeth's fears. So now we're going to be reading this text, and then we're going to be thinking about fear the whole time. And then we need to be thinking about fear in the play as a whole. So what are the main things? So we know that with fear and Macbeth, it's a lot around guilt. It's a lot about fear of afterlife, and it's a lot about, the fact that the prophecies have come true, but they're not really looking good for him. And it's about his fears with Banquo and killing Duncan. So we're going to be reading this, and we're going to be thinking about that. So if we look at this bit here, I tell my students to highlight this text. Sorry, that's a little bit wonky. So if we're thinking about, fear, so this would be my AO2. And then I highlight it, and then I just put something I try and write, but I haven't got my mouse. Just something about, Macbeth's fears about not having a line beneath him, because the prophecy said that Banquo's children will become king and not his. So then that is his fear of continuation. What's the point of him being king if it's, he's not going to pass it on to anybody? And then we can talk about his fears with Banquo somewhere. Just somewhere in the text says about that. So we could just, this isn't the best one, but just about Banquo's fears on my mind. It's just about, the guilt he's feeling along there. So then I tell my students to go along there, highlight, and then mark about what the point you're making this is. And then we get to planning our essay. We'd put just anywhere on the text, we just put a P1 and then introduction. Sorry, this is really tricky about a mouse. I use the text box. So we put P1 introduction, and then we'd have P2 would be our first point, which can be about Banquo, and then we can have our P3 being about, afterlife and future. And then P4 can be about killing Duncan. And then we've got the P5 for the conclusion. So what I then tell students to do is just make sub-notes on those, just going into more detail about what you're actually going to talk about, the bits of the text you're going to go, and spend 10 minutes doing this, because you'll find that when you come to writing the essay, it's going to look so much more cohesive and so much better if you've got that structure in place. And then just make sure that when you're planning it out, you make little notes about how you're going to be hitting those AO3s. So, example, like if you're talking about here the afterlife and the future, just make a little AO3 point to make sure you talk about, the laws at the time and the things with kings, how kings at the time or people ruling them perceive themselves and perceive their futures and legacies. Just put that in to explain why Macbeth fears so much that he wouldn't have a legacy, because Duncan's going to take over. So that's the basis of how to tackle the Shakespeare play. I think Shakespeare is probably the trickiest one to come into as a tutor and do, because there's lots of weird themes and the writing style can get a bit tricky, and it's not like one of the 19th century novel, modern text, where you can just pick it up and read it, because a lot of it is quite challenging to get stuck into. But with these little lessons, I'm going to be attaching all the stuff that I use to do my research and just makes life a lot easier. So I hope you found this one helpful on Shakespeare, and I'll catch you in the next one.